Hello, my name is Joey, and my refutation speech is on Alex's claim that the world will be a much better place if we are all vegetarians. Her secondary claims were: being a vegetarian has health benefits, there are economic benefits in being a vegetarian, and there are benefits to the environment. Her first point: being a vegetarian has health benefits. Alex said red meat is associated with heart disease and diabetes. That is partly true. Harvard Health wrote that there is no connection between unprocessed red meat and the development of heart disease and diabetes, but there is a correlation between processed red meat. So how much processed red meat can we eat? I tried to go on the myplate.gov, but it was shut down because the government shut down. So I was looking for other sources. I found an article by Telegraph UK saying that government scientific advisors recommend that people should not consume more than 2.5 ounces of unprocessed red meat a day. So you could eat under 2.5 ounces of processed red meat and still be healthy and reap the benefits of being a vegetarian. I like to say you will lose weight when you conform to a vegetarian diet, while you could also lose weight by other forms of dieting, except the Krispy Kreme diet. I tried that, it won't work. But the reason is because you cut the calorie intake and then you lose weight. You just gotta eat the proper portion amount and the recommended value that you really need, and do not overeat. Her secondary claim was that there are economic benefits in being a vegetarian. Alex said being a vegetarian helps save money because meat is more expensive than fruits and vegetables. Well, vegetarians and non-vegetarians share that in common. Fruits and vegetables and grains, the only thing different is meat. And in substitution of meat, vegetarians eat tofu, and which can get pretty expensive. Can get pretty expensive. LA Times Daily Dish was comparing the two items, and they wrote that veggie bacon costs $15.97 a pound, Farmer John bacon a pound is $6.99. Chicken wings cost $9.13 a pound, real wings $5.71 a pound, turkey slices $11.61 a pound, cold cut turkeys $3.99 a pound, and cheese slices $8.75 a pound, and American cheese slices $3.72 a pound. So showing that eating real meat is actually less expensive than becoming vegetarian. Also, she said that tofu will create more jobs without quoting any sources or professional opinions. I actually tried to find this fact about 2 hours. I couldn't find anything on this. Thirdly, she said that there are benefits to the environment. Alex said that 2,400 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of meat, and 25 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of wheat. That'll be a problem if we were actually running out of fresh water in our ecosystem. Life Science wrote that the world is not running out of fresh water. There is plenty of fresh water in our globe. It isn't raining any less these days than it did a millennia ago. As with any resources, there are, of course, regional shortages. And what are causing these regional shortages are wasteful irrigation that farmers use to water their crops. WWFPanda.org. WWF stands for the World Wildlife Foundation, wrote that agriculture wastes 60%, or 1,500 trillion liters of 250 trillion liters of water each year. The main causes of wasteful water is leaky irrigation system, wasteful field application, and cultivating of thirsty crops not suited to the environment. And let's see about the land. A study by Cranfield University, a switch from beef and milk products to tofu could actually increase the quantity of land needed to supply the UK, resulting use of foreign land to produce the substitute product. Also, potential destruction of the forest to make way of farmland outweighs the negative of the rearing of beef and lamb in the UK. Also, if we also increase the land that's needed for the whole world to become a vegetarian, we're going to actually start wasting more water compared to how much water we waste on crops today. In conclusion, the world will not be a much better place if we're all vegetarians, because eating meat and vegetarian has the same health benefits if you eat meat properly. It is more economically fitted for a person to eat meat than tofu, and the environment is better off the way it is than if we all switch to be a vegetarian diet and wastes more water of our natural resources. Thank you.
All right, Joey, I thought you did a good job at the beginning, starting off by labeling what the proposition was and what the secondary claims are, so it's going to be easy for us to follow. And you're also very consistent in the body of the speech, telling us which one of the advocate's arguments you're talking about at any given time. What else you do well is you identify counterclaims when you're making them, arguing, for instance, the cost comparison or the absence of a water shortage, and both of those are pretty clear. You also did a good job finding evidence to support your counterclaims, and I thought that that goes a long way in rebutting the arguments presented by the advocate. I do think sometimes that you need to maybe look at the advocate's reasoning and their evidence a little bit more closely. I did hear the one argument on the employment thing, and you just said, look, there wasn't any evidence presented by them, and I think that that's a reasonable charge to make. That's an assertion on their part. But I think you needed to make some of those other arguments in other places. For instance, on the whole thing about red meat, what evidence did the advocate use to present those points? There's not really any discussion of whether their evidence was adequate or sufficient to prove those points. You kind of rely on your counterclaim to address that issue, and I think you developed the counterclaim pretty well, but you're kind of conceding the idea that meat has in fact an inherent health risk to it. Maybe it does, and maybe you've got the right strategy here, but I didn't really hear much about their evidence, so as a consequence, I didn't feel like that part of the argument was as strong. I like the analysis that you had. I thought you had a good alternative counterclaim on that point, but I think you may be conceding too much early on that particular argument. The water argument, I think you just went straight for this idea that we don't have this shortage, that there's not really a problem here. The fact that we spend 25 gallons producing one or the other doesn't really matter. I thought that your argument about the cost issue, it's premised on the idea that people are going to substitute tofu for meat, which is, maybe they will, maybe they won't, except you should point out a little bit more. You made a passing reference to it, that the advocate actually suggested that this is really what's going to happen. That's their argument about increasing jobs, because we have to, producing those kinds of things would be more labor intensive, which means more people would get work. So in essence, the argument that they're making suggests that's a likely thing, instead of you're having to argue it yourself. Say they've kind of conceded that from the beginning. And I think that's a good way to make that argument stronger, because then you can point out that your comparisons completely undermine the claim that the advocate presented because of the cost comparisons. The tofu bacon, that's $15 a pound versus $6 a pound for the real bacon, and the other comparisons that you made. I thought that was really effective there, and you could just maybe emphasize that point a little bit more by pointing out that maybe some vegetarians wouldn't substitute meat for tofu, but the advocate is the one who said that that's probably what would happen, and their argument on economic growth depends on that sort of thing happening. So in essence, we're going to be doubling the cost to people, not reducing their costs, which is the complete opposite of the claim that the advocate presented. So everything's well organized. I thought you had really good counterclaims on the issue, maybe a little bit more argument about the advocate's evidence and reasoning, although there were 2 or 3 places where you did a good job on that. The only thing that I think is a little bit problematic is your presentation. At the beginning, you kind of rushed through the points, and you need to pause a couple of spots where you're getting to the secondary points. For instance, it's basically, here's their claim, their first claim was this, their second claim was this, and their main proposition is this. The first claim was that, just take a breath. And you do that in a couple of spots, and that's just a simple delivery issue. It may be anxiety, it may just be that's the way you're reading things. I thought you were better in the body of the speech when you were doing your transitions, but you need to be more consistent like that at the beginning and the end. That'll give a better impression. It wasn't bad, it was just that's something to fix. Okay? All right. Thank you.